What's up, everybody? It's Nick here from Hi-Fi for All. We're back in the workshop today. I just wanted to make a little video for you to show you what it's like to build the headphone cable for the HFA Dahlia headphone. We're gonna go from start to finish. I'm gonna show you all the little parts and pieces that go into making the headphone cable, and then just the way I do it, maybe some thoughts on what I think makes a great cable for a headphone. And I hope this is informative, but also just really entertaining. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started on it. Okay, so here we are at the bench. We've got some supplies to make the headphone cable. Let's just quickly go over some of the stuff that we're gonna need here. So we've got the wire itself, which is a Mogami oxygen-free copper cable. And it's a microphone cable. It's really nice. It's nice and flexible and soft, which is really important. It's fully shielded and has 2 conductors per core. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a 2-core twisted cable out of this material. And then we also have the connectors for the headphone. And these are the Amphenol KM2BP-AU, AU being the gold-coated connectors. And so these are 3.5 millimeter mono connectors that are gonna go into the headphone. And then today we're gonna be making a balanced 4.4 XLR, or not 4.4, this is a balanced XLR 4-pin cable. So we're gonna use this for the amplifier termination. And let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're gonna have to do is measure out 2 segments of this Mogami OFC copper, and each one is going to be 5 feet long. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do this quickly and then use my little handy dandy clippers to snip this. So let's measure it out. There's 3 feet and then 2 feet. So now I've got one side. This is 5 feet worth of cable here. And I'm just gonna zoom out so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So I'm using I made a little like measurement ruler out of tape here on the edge of the bench. You can kind of see it right here. And so what I do is I just take this cable and then I just run it along the edge of this workbench to quickly measure this out. Okay, there's 36 and 24 inches. Boom. Okay. We're gonna snip that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get back over here. All right, so now we have 10 total feet of wire, which is 2 pieces of 5 measured out. I'm gonna set this stuff aside here. Okay. Next step we're gonna do is we're going to align these 2 pieces of wire, and we're going to twist the 2 cores together to create what's gonna be the cable. So what I like to do is I take the 2 pieces and then I measure out 14 inches from one end. Actually, before I do that, I'm gonna mark which one is left and which one is right, because it's good to do that before we go too deep into this. So I'm gonna take a little red paint marker. I'm gonna mark one end red meaning right, and then I'm gonna do the same thing for the other end of this. Okay, right here. Boom. All right, so now we've got red. So now we know, after we twist it all together, we know which side is going to be the right channel and which side is going to be the left. Now, next step is going to be connecting these 2. And then what I like to do is I measure out about 14 inches from the very end. And that's going to tell me where I'm going to need to put the Y splitter. Okay, I like to have about 14 inches of length after the Y splitter, between the Y split and the headphone, so that the cable hangs not too low from the splitter, but gives you enough length where you're not feeling choked either. Okay, and so here we go. Okay, And so right here, I just measured 14 inches. I'm just gonna put a little piece of masking tape, and that's gonna tell me exactly where the Y splitter is going to go. Now, after this piece of tape, we're gonna have to twist this wire to create the core. And there's no rhyme or reason to how I twist this. I just I'd like to get at least, you know, one twist every probably 2 inches. And that gives you enough where the cable stays together, it doesn't loosen up, and you don't have like weird gaps in the headphone cable, but at the same time, it's not so twisted that you lose that flexibility when you go to curl the cable up to put it away. So that's really the key, is you just want to have enough twisting to where, you know, there's no gaps, but at the same time, still very flexible, so that you can just quickly wrap it up and toss it in your travel bag, your sound satchel. Okay, so I'm just gonna do this by hand here. There was a point where I was like, oh man, I'm gonna figure out a really fast way to do this twisting, and I hooked up my drill and I taped one side of this cable to the wall, and I put the other end into my power drill, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna really speed this up. So I I hit it, and it twisted it, but it was so tight and insane that it was just overkill. And so that actually ended up taking me way longer to make the cable than just doing it by hand. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe this is just the better way to do it. Just do it by hand and take my time and make sure that things are done right, and, you know, not try to take any shortcuts. If you have a faster way to do this at home, you know, just feel free to let me know. Maybe there is, but I don't know. It's not too bad. It's kind of relaxing. You just, yeah, just get into your little meditative Zen moment, and, you know, it's nice. Slow things down a bit. It's not all about speed sometimes, you know. Sometimes it's okay to take your time and do things slowly. Okay, we're almost done. We're getting up towards the end of this cable. Here we are. Now, as we get towards the end, we're pretty close there. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually seal this off to make sure it stays together. And there's a couple of reasons why I'm about to do this. I'm going to use a piece of pre-cut heat shrink, but it has adhesive on the inside too, so it'll actually stick. And I'm going to put this on right here, probably about, if I had to guess, maybe right here. This looks pretty good. About 2 inches down from the very end of this, I'm gonna go ahead and just seal this off. Okay, and I'm gonna use my little heat gun to get this thing started. I run my heat gun at about 150 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't want it too hot so that it actually melts some of the jacket that's on the cable. And so this does take a little longer than I'd probably like, but at the same time, I'd rather be safe than sorry here. So, yeah, it's almost done here. All right, that looks pretty good. So now we should have it tied off and twisted, and yeah, that's all sealed off and ready to go. And this is gonna actually go in the amp termination side, so we're gonna put the 4-pin XLR right here. So if we look at the cable now, let's take a gander at it. What we should have is something that's starting to resemble a headphone cable. So we have the, from the Y split down is twisted, and then this is going to end up being where the headphone connectors go. So, pretty cool. All right. Next up is we're gonna start to actually go ahead and work on this amp termination. And I love these connectors. These are made by Amphenol. I think it's a European company. And I just find that their connectors are just really solid. They're easy to work with, super high quality. I really like the gold-plated ones because when you work with a gold-plated connector, the durability on these pins actually is better than the ones that are nickel or, you know, tin-plated. And so that's the reason why it's a little more money, but I think it's worth it because over the long run, you know, if these pins hold up really well, it's probably gonna save you money. So yeah, let's use this Amphenol. It's AX4MB-AU for those following at home want to make your own cable. There you go. That's the one I use. All the parts are really nice quality too. We're gonna go ahead and just insert the boot, this little rubber boot first. There's been so many times where I forget to put the boot on and then I get the soldering all done and then realize, oh no, the boot's not on, and I have to unsolder and do this whole thing again. It's really bad. This piece actually is the collet that applies strain relief, so we're gonna leave this off for now. And then this obviously is gonna be the finishing touch, the plug. We're gonna leave that up too. So, all right, so here we are. This is the pins for the 4-pin XLR, and we have our little solder cups in there. And the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna strip the ends of this cable, and we marked off the one that was right and left before, so this is the right one, and I'm just going to make them nice and even to get started. So we have a good starting point, and I'm going to go ahead and start stripping this away. I'm going to strip about 1 centimeter of outer jacket off. It's about how much we're going to need here. There we go. So you can see here, there's about 1 centimeter of outer jacket that's been gone. And then, actually, that red mark is not as low as I'd like, so I'm going to make sure I don't lose that. Okay. All right. Oh, well, that screw just found. Go over. Let's do another centimeter. Okay. Awesome. And if we do the outer jacket, you'll see that there's a bunch of shielding around the conductors. And so what we're going to do is we're not going to use the shielding as any sort of connection point. So we're going to have to just clip all that off. The shielding is good. I mean, it protects the conductor from any interference from things like EMI, you know, electromagnetic interference, cable crosstalk, you know, stuff like that. So it's good to have shielding. It just depends on the length of the cable too. If we're only doing 5 feet, it's not really going to be doing a ton of stuff, but you know, it certainly doesn't hurt. And there is some durability attribute to that too. So if it does have shielding, and for example, something like a pet, if you have like a cat or a dog and it chews on the cable, like it's just another layer that the animal has to get through before it hits the conductor. So maybe it could save your cable in the event that there's an attack from an animal, a domestic animal or a wild animal as well. So yeah, so shielding's not a bad thing. It doesn't hurt, certainly. But we're gonna clip away the shielding just for the ends here. Make sure we get a nice clean area. There, looks pretty good. Okay, we've got the shielding clipped away, and now what we're left with is 4, I don't know if I can get the camera to this, yeah, 4 conductors. There's a red and a white for each side. This is the right channel, and then that's the left channel. The red is going to be the positive, and the white is going to be the negative for each channel. So that's kind of how we allocate that. And I'm just going to strip off just the end of each conductor, because we're going to go ahead and start tinning these to prepare them for the solder. Okay. I forgot to actually turn on my little Hacko. Okay. So now you can see we've stripped those down. I don't know if the camera can see this, but I only strip about 3 or 4 millimeters from the end. That's all we're really gonna need. Sometimes I like to twist them too before I tin them, just to get all the strands in order and tightened up. Okay. it's not absolutely necessary to do that. I mean, if you're building a cable at home and you don't do that, that's fine, but I just like, makes me feel good. But, okay, so the next step is gonna be to tin these wires. So we're gonna do that. I'm actually gonna use my clips to better show you how to do this. Okay. Okay, here we go. So let's get that in camera so we can see what we're doing. And then we're gonna use this Kester solder again. This is a solder I talked about in a previous video when I was making that socket. We're gonna use that same high quality silver solder. I think it's like 3% silver solder, so it's gonna be good solder to use for building a headphone cable. All right, now let's go ahead and tin it up. Okay, smoking. That smoke that's coming off that's actually flux that's smoking. So inside of the solder, there is some flux that helps the solder flow. And so a lot of that smoke is just the rosin flux that's burning off. And then some of that is also the jacket and stuff like that too. So yeah, you just don't want to breathe that in. That's bad for you. All right, so these tips are now soldered. They look pretty good. I like that. Next step is going to be to solder these conductors into these cups. And so the way I like to do this is, I usually just do it down on the bench, but for the video, I might just do it up here just so you can see it a little easier. And these little cups are actually marked on the inside. There's a number assigned to each solder cup. I don't know if you can see that. It's gonna be tough to see it, but there's a 1, 2, 3, and a 4. And I'm just gonna look at it quickly. Okay, so the one that's closest to us right now, this one is number 4, and 4 represents the negative right channel. 3 is the next one that represents positive right. 2 is the negative left, and then 1 at the very end over here is positive left. So you just, if you build enough cables, you just memorize what those are, and then, yeah, and then you can just solder each conductor to that right cup. And so the first one, which is number 4, is the negative right. So I know which one's right because I marked it with my marker. And I'm just gonna move the camera a little bit closer so you can see what's going on here. Okay. Okay, now I'm just gonna put this right negative. Right negative is the white conductor. And then also, probably gonna do the other one too at the same time. Positive and negative, so let's turn this a bit. Okay. I'm just gonna get these aligned a little easier so that way they stay in the little solder cups when I put it in. Boom. Just like that. Okay, they don't need to be super deep in the solder cups, but just in there enough. And then we're gonna superheat this solder. There's one, and then there's 2. That should be good. Now if we look at the solder connection, we should see that the wire is solidly in the cup, and that we have a really clean and separate connection there. That looks pretty good there. Now we're gonna turn it, and now we're gonna do the other channel, the left channel. So pretty much the same process here. I'm gonna turn it a little bit here. Okay. Put that in there. Very good. Sweet. I usually do this a lot quicker, but it's I usually do it on the workbench where it's a little faster. So doing it like in this clip is kind of tricky. Okay, let's do this. We're all set. So let's take a look at the solder joints. Pretty good. I don't try to use too much solder in there, just enough to, fill the cups, but also make sure that the wire is fully seated in there. You want to have good separation. That's really the key. Is that, none of these contacts are going to touch each other, which is, that's really the most important thing. That looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. And then the conductor jacket, which is the white and red covering, goes all the way up to the solder cup, which is good, which means that there's going to be, no exposed conductor there, which is nice. And then we should be good to go. Let's move this clip out of the way. And so the next step is going to be to insert this into the XLR plug. It's very exciting. So this is the piece that you plug directly into your amplifier. We're gonna first put this little jacket on. Do you remember this little heat shrink thing that we put on? So what we wanna do is we wanna align this collet that also provides the strain relief. And when we align it, to the pins like that, you can see that the teeth should bite down on that little heat shrink wrap that we made earlier. So that was the goal for that. And then you just insert this into the XLR plug. Oop, I think I just did that a little sideways. That's okay. This has to be aligned pretty much perfectly. There we go. There it is. Easy breezy. And after we insert that, we move the boot down and then twist the boot on, the rubber boot. As we twist this boot, it's going to apply pressure, squeezing pressure to the collet, and that will actually lock down the cable for the strain relief. So I like to have this really nice and tight. And there we go. Look at that. She's a beauty. Very nice. Okay. Now that we've got the amplifier section finished, the next step is going to be to slide on the Y splitter. Now, I like to use this really nice anodized aluminum Y splitter for a few reasons. It's lightweight, it's compact, it has chamfering on both sides, a little bevel, so that it doesn't snag on your desk or your table when you're listening. Sometimes when you have a cable that has a flat top, it'll grab on the edge of the table and kind of be super jarring. So this thing has a little bevel so that it'll just bump around and bump off flat edges. It's just really clean and nice too. I just really like it. So we're gonna slide this on here. Before we do that, just kidding, I'm going to use another piece of heat shrink first before I jump in. Let's see which one. Right here. I like this one. longer piece of this. I think I have one. Dang, I don't have anything pre-cut though, so I'm gonna have to cut this. That's fine. So we're just gonna put this away. All right, so we're gonna just pre-cut this to the right length. I'm gonna use a pair of scissors. I usually use a scalpel, but I'm just gonna use scissors just for the sake of moving this along quickly. And hopefully we get this nice and straight. So we wanna measure out pretty much exactly the length of this little Y-split. I'm just gonna eyeball it for now. Yeah, right about there. That looks pretty nice. Cool, that'll work. It's about the right length. How straight is that though? That's pretty good. Pretty happy with that. So next step we're gonna do is slide this heat shrink on to really seal things up. Okay. And we had some tape on here earlier. We're just gonna remove this tape. This was just a marker to let us know exactly where that 14 inches was. So we're gonna remove this old tape and we're gonna replace it with this heat shrink, which will give us the permanent steel. Also just, it'll make the Y-splitter actually fit really, really perfectly. So let's go ahead and do that. Make sure it's twisted underneath the heat shrink because we want to maintain that twist. So the key is to just twist it to make sure the twist is underneath here. And that'll maintain that twist. And then we're gonna heat gun this. This is looking quite nice. Okay, very good. So that's where the Y-split is going to go. We're going to slide the Y-split over that. Going to give us, now this is actually directional. This is where we have to pay attention. So remember how we marked it right and left on the ends of the cable? So we got to figure out which one's right and left. It looks like this one is the right. Okay. And so with the right cable, we want to make sure that the screws are facing towards us and that the right channel is on the right. And then, yeah, the screws want to be in the back of the cable, obviously. So we want to make sure that's the correct orientation. And this should fit perfectly over this heat shrink. It's very, very snug, but it's actually a really nice fit. We want to make sure we maintain that the screws are behind the cable, left and right. Continue to squeeze this in. All right, we're almost there. It's going to take a little bit of pressure here. That's okay. Just a little more. I'm going to twist it a little bit just to help it out. It's looking pretty good. We're almost there. Let's make sure the right and left is still the right way. Okay, this is the right. So just twist a little bit. Pretty happy with that. We have a little bit of heat shrink there, that's cool. And now we're ready to lock it down. And so the way we secure this is with 2 set screws. Pretty simple. These set screws are tiny. They are very, very small. This part's actually quite annoying. But we do know that when we do have this on there, it's not going anywhere. So that's a good thing. Okay, there's one. And then we have 2. Very good. So now that we have the set screws locked in place, we know that the right is in the right section and the left is on the right side. We are going to cover this beautiful aluminum piece. We're going to cover with our branded heat shrink to protect the aluminum and also just give it a soft bumper in case you bang into things. We want to make sure that it's not metal on metal, that it's got some softness to it. And so what we do is we install one of these. These are a really nice heat shrink that I got from a supplier. This little piece right here took I would say 3 to 4 months to actually develop this little piece. I got 3 different suppliers to make me them, and I was not satisfied with the quality that came out. The print is really crisp and clean, and the black and the white contrast is excellent on this little piece. Here, I'll show you a copy from another supplier that I got that looked okay. I mean, it wasn't bad, but I didn't like the color. It was more of a gray than it was a black. And you'll see here that the color difference is pretty obvious. So this is the one I ended up going with. This is a much darker black, and the white really pops off of this one. This is kind of a gray, almost a gray, and the print itself isn't actually as sharp either. I don't know if you can tell, but there's some like aliasing and stuff like that on this one, whereas this one is really sharp and clean, super nice. So yeah, so anyway, I got a bag full of these. I don't know what to do with, but I just wanted to show you that. And then the other thing I do is I got one size and I actually cut them down to fit the Y splitter. So here I developed a little chopping device. It's called the chopper, and I made these little 3D printed stop blocks that let me cut these little pieces exactly the right length. And so what I do is I push a little piece against that little stop block that I made, and then boom, it's like a guillotine. You just pull it down, and then you get a perfectly cut heat shrink for the Y splitter. And the thing is, it's really straight. You want it to be straight. You don't want it to be diagonal. If you cut it by hand with scissors, it's always gonna have a little slant. It's not gonna look great. So I made this little chopper that helps me just keep things nice and tidy and straight and perfect every time. Boom, look at that. All right, thank you, chopper. So we're gonna put this over here. And I do this with the other heat shrink pieces too. So I have a bunch of pre-cut things that are exactly the right length for the use case, and I use a little chopper. I think this is actually made for people who work on model trains that cut railroad tracks for those, and they cut these little balsa tracks, and they use this little chopper device to cut that, but I just repurposed it for heat shrink cutting. It's pretty sweet. Okay, so now that we have our heat shrink piece, we're gonna run this down. so what we're gonna do is the logo is gonna be facing the front and the screws are facing the back. So we're gonna make sure that it aligns perfectly, and then we're gonna go ahead and just push it down. Now it's a really tight fit. So this heat shrink is basically already the size pre-shrunk. It's the size of this splitter, but I like to have it like this so it doesn't loosen up over time. And so I want it to fit really, really tight so that it doesn't fall off later. And so I pretty much push it on, and then there's just a little bit of shrinking that needs to happen for it to fully conform. And then, so we're gonna go ahead and just quickly do that. I start with the top first. I just go around it. Get the middle. You'll see the screw holes start to appear. So that looks pretty dang sweet. Actually, I'm gonna put a little more heat on the bottom one too, just to really seal it out. I think that could benefit from some more heat. Because that has some adhesive on there too, so we're gonna make sure that's really nice and sealed. That looks really nice. Okay, we're done with the Y-split. Final piece is going to be the most exciting piece, which is the headphone connectors. The part that plugs into your headphone socket. And so, now, let's focus on the ends. First things first, we need to unwrap these beautiful connectors. I use the Amphenol KM2PB-AU gold-plated mono 3.5. In my opinion, this is the greatest headphone connector of all time. No need to search for another. This is it right here. Okay, so let's unwrap 2 of these. And I'll tell you why I really like these. So I explored a bunch of options when it comes to you have a lot of options when it comes to 3.5 millimeter connectors. There's a million different options out there. And these connectors have a lot of little features that are very well thought out, especially for this use case. And let's just walk around it. I'll tell you what I like about them. Number 1, the boot is the perfect size for this conductor. This is a 2.8 millimeter wire, and this boot right here is literally, it just fits perfectly. So that's one thing I love. Look at that. It's just nice. It looks like it was made for that. That's one thing. It's an all metal shell, which is really nice, right? You don't want plastic, you want metal. So it's super durable. The size, it's relatively compact. And let's take a look at another connector that I consider made by another great company called Rheem Neutrik. They make awesome connectors as well. This is the RTP2CB. It's the same type of connector. It's a 3.5 millimeter mono connector. So I thought, let's take a look at this one and see if it's nice. And it is. It's great. It's a gold-plated connector. It's a little bigger in terms of the size overall. If you look at how it fits together, it's a little longer. But there's some drawbacks. The boot hole is a little bigger than the other one, so that's one part I really don't care for. if we open it up, you'll see right off the bat, the strain relief is not as good. So on the Amphenol connector, look at that. You have 3 different claws that grip down onto the cable. So that's nice right off the bat versus the Reen one, which only has 2, and they're actually aligned, which means they overlap. And that's not great either because you're actually concentrating all of the strain relief on one point in the cable. On the Amphenol, because there's 3 and they don't overlap, you're distributing the strain relief over 3 separate points on the cable instead of just 1. So that's a pretty big and significant difference there, and you can see it here. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but yeah, there it is. So that's one thing. The solder points themselves are, you know, they're both not bad. The Reen has a center pin solder cup, which is fine, but the thing I like better about the Amphenol is that there's more space between the shield plate on the bottom and the center positive connector on the top. You see how much space there is between there? And that's good. That's a good thing. That means we don't have to worry about crosstalk or shorting out the cable. And you'll see what I mean when we start to solder it. This one, not a lot of space. Look how close that center pin is to the shielding. It's very, very tight. It's close. So not as good there either. But the final thing that really matters the most to me, honestly, in our specific use case, is that if you look here, the plug itself on the Amphenol is short and it's actually kind of flush to this plate right here versus the Reen, which has this like little protruding area right here, and it ends up being longer. And when you plug it into the headphone socket, remember these things we talked about the other day? So if you look at the Reen, right, and you plug it in to the socket, oh, that nice satisfying click, that's very nice. You'll see that the socket itself still protrudes from the, you'll see how far it protrudes from the socket. Look, there's like a little space there, and that's because you have this little thing right here, this little edge. But on the Amphenol, let's take a look at this sweet thing of beauty. Okay. Look at that. So I don't have it screwed in all the way, but you can see how flush that is. There's no gap, no space, so it's clean. It's really flush. It gets much closer. And when we finish it, I'm gonna have to, finish it off so I can show you fully, but it's just it sits a lot more flush to the socket, and that's really nice for us. So that was a quick comparison and the reason why I chose the Amphenol. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I do is I want to put a little rubber band, to mark the right channel on this little shell, and I use this 7mm rubber ring. I've tried other sizes. Like if you look here, this one is 8mm. It goes on a lot easier. It's more snug. It's not as snug, and what happens is on the 8mm one, it fits around here perfectly and it goes on really easy, but it falls off over time. It just kind of like slips off. And then I have the 7mm version that did the same thing. And so I had to, actually, this is actually 6mm. I had to go all the way down to 6 to make sure that it was super tight on this thing and didn't just roll off arbitrarily. And so, yeah, that's why I chose a 6mm ring, but it's really hard to put on. So this is the most annoying part of building this entire cable. You'll get to see me struggle with this. This happens every single time. I haven't found a good way to do this without breaking the band. I try to just roll it on, but it always takes a few tries. Yeah, this thing sucks. Ooh, I almost had it that time. God, I wish the 8mm one stayed on. Wouldn't have to struggle so bad with this. Oh, got it. Okay, so there. I hope you really appreciate that rubber ring. That's such a pain. There, now we have the right shell ready to go. And we're gonna make sure we put it on the right channel. So marked it with the red earlier. And we're just gonna put that on there like that. Same thing with the left, but we don't have to mark the left, which is nice. We just pop it on. All right. So now we won't forget to put that on later. We already have this done. Let's see, what else? Oh, actually, you know what? Before I do that, what I like to do is I like to make sure that it's the exact perfect length before we get started, because I hate when connectors come out the wrong length and you have one longer than the other, or one side longer than the other. So we're gonna just really make sure that it's pretty close, but you can see there is length difference. So we're gonna make sure ahead of time that this is clipped exactly the same length. Boom, look at that. So your connector should be exactly right there. Now we can proceed with putting these shells on. And the other thing we need to put on is this little plastic shield protector. This is actually really important. It protects the outer shell from contacting the positive connection. You'll see what I'm talking about too once we build it, but I'm gonna put those on next week so I don't forget those either. Okay, so we have those plastic protectors. All right, very good. Next up is to strip down this wire, just the end. Pretty much the same thing we did with the XLR side, but we're just gonna do the same thing. We're gonna take off about 1 centimeter of jacket. Yeah, pretty much the same deal. Just gonna put this in the tray. There's one. About 1 centimeter here. And then we're gonna trim off that jacket, or the shielding. Trim that off. That looks nice and clean. There's no shielding remaining. It's all we have left is our beautiful conductors left and right. Next up is going to be to trim just a small. We want to make this really tiny. We're just going to trim just a little bit of shielding away from that, so that we have enough to solder onto the 3.5 millimeter connector. Okay. Next up is to tin these little wires. Okay. I'm just gonna do this real quick. It's no bother. I'm not gonna bother twisting these because they're so small. You can barely even touch these things. There's no point in really twisting them. We're just gonna tin them up ahead of time so that they just stick right to the conductor. All right. That looks pretty sweet. So we got those. All right, final step. This is the most exciting part. Okay, here we go. I normally just do this on my bench too, but I'm just gonna do this for the sake of the video. I'm just gonna show you up here so you can see. All right, so what we're gonna do first is we're gonna put some solder on the bottom shielding plate. Okay, just a nice healthy blob there. We're gonna wait until that heats up enough to the point where it really sticks to the bottom plate. That looks pretty nice. And then we're gonna do the same thing for the positive connector, just a little bit there. Okay. Next step is going to be mating the conductor here. Nice. That looks sweet. Last step is that positive. We're just gonna angle it a little bit so that way I get it really close. Ooh, that's hot. All right, there we go. And just angle it a little bit. Look at that. Alright, so when now we're finished, we can see that this is nicely soldered to the top, and then the bottom has plenty of solder for the negative. And before we clamp this down to provide that strain relief and then seal everything up, I'm gonna do the other side first, and then we're gonna multimeter to make sure that the connections are all really good. Okay, so same exact process for the other channel. Oh, I forgot I did this earlier to demonstrate the comparison, but I'm just going to pull this apart just a little bit. Okay. Get this set up properly. Now we're going to solder the wire. That looks really good. So now we can take a look here. You can see the top section has a very nice solder joint there, and then on the negative we got that ground thing just locked down. Okay. Now, before I do the multimeter test, I'm actually gonna do this once again. I'm gonna measure it once again to make sure they come out exactly the right length, because sometimes it'll affect the length when you do the soldering part, but it looks pretty damn good. Yeah, that's the right length. Look, they're pretty much bang on. Yep, we are good. Let's do the multimeter test right now, just to make sure all the connections are going, I guess it would be all the electrons are flowing properly. I actually started building this really cool headphone tester that has lights and stuff, but I ran out of time before the pre-order started, so that's something I'm gonna have to come back to. It'll be a cool project later on, right? You plug it in and then all these lights come on. It's pretty sweet, but right now we're just gonna test the, let's see, which side is this? This is the right side. So the right side is going to be, this pin is gonna be positive, so we want the positive connection here. Yep, and the beep means we got a good connection there. And I also test the negative side to make sure there's no, crosstalk or anything, so that looks good. And then on the ground shielding side of this, we should get a beep on the fourth pin, so, and nothing on the positive, so that's good. So right side looks good, and now we're gonna do the left. So the second pin is the shielding part, so we should get a connection there. Yep. and nothing on the positives. That's good. And then here we are on the tip. We're gonna test the, oh, you can't even see this on the camera, but we're gonna test the tip of the left with the first pin. Very good. And then nothing on the negative. So everything multimetered out great. And the next step is going to be to start clamping things down. So let's go ahead and do that. I like to twist this up a little bit so that the jacket is actually right on that first claw. That way we get the strain relief directly onto that outer jacket. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. All 3 claws are down. And then I also like to bend this positive thing down just a hair to make sure it doesn't contact the outer shell. Now the plastic piece here will protect it, will cover it, like you can see right here. This whole thing goes over and protects the metal from the shell, so that looks pretty nice right there. And then the next step is I like to put a little Loctite on this as well. So a little Loctite just to make sure it stays closed, doesn't loosen up over time. Very good. And now we can close the shell. This should be just one fluid motion. No resistance, just a nice, clean, easy fit. Look at that thing of beauty. Very nice. That's the right side, obviously. Now the same for the left. So I'm going to twist this up just a little bit. Okay. I'm going to remeasure this one more time before I really lock it down. I'm so OCD, like I want to make sure this lines up perfectly for people. So. Okay, so this one is about 1 millimeter longer. I'm glad I did that. So I'm just gonna, this is pretty easy. I'm just gonna push it in just another millimeter. Bam, like that. Easy. I'm gonna get this started actually before I even put the Loctite on. Let's put some Loctite. I like that. Nice. Very, very easy and clean. There it is. There's the left. Very beautiful. And now, when I measure this out, I'm gonna hold this Y split. Ooh, yeah. Perfect length. They're exactly the same. Look at that. Things of beauty. All right, folks. Wow. It looks like things have been multimetered and tested. And that is it. We have completed the HFA Dahlia headphone cable. Let me just curl it up the way I would like it curled up when I ship it to you. I usually just, curl it up like this so that it's nice and tidy. And that's very nice. And so you can see here, this is a completed cable. I will give it a little test on the amplifier using a headphone too, just to smoke test it, test left and right channel. Initially, it's funny when you first plug in the cable, it does sound a little crunchy, but then it burns in. I think that there is some truth to the burn in, but it doesn't require a lot of burn in. I would say that after the first day of using it, it's going to sound the same from there on out. So yeah, I recommend maybe 24 hours burn in before things fully settle in. But that is the HFA Dahlia cable right there. All right, well, thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it all the way to the end, this is a longer one, but yeah, I hope that was informative. If you're making headphone cables at home and maybe you found this useful, that would be great. This headphone cable, this actual cable, is going to somebody who pre-ordered the Dahlia headphones. So we're gonna ship this out to a customer who graciously supported the launch of the HFA Dahlia headphones. So I'm excited to get this out. I'll be making cables for the rest of the day today. If you have any questions in the comments, I'll help you out. I'll do whatever I can to answer them, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. It's another beautiful day in San Francisco. There's no rain. It's all just sunny today, so that's pretty sweet. I hope you guys had a wonderful weekend. I will certainly see you guys soon, and I'll catch you later.